It's time to wind down, time to wise up. Discussing life, exploring the word, gaining wisdom with encouraging words. It's time for Tea with Tiff.
Good evening and welcome to Tea Time with Tiff. I am your host, Tiffany Henderson, and I am so delighted to have you with me tonight. Tonight is a very special tea time, as always, because I have amazing guests. And tonight, my guest is no less amazing. She's the bomb. And I really, before I get started, make sure you chat with us live. April and I will be here all night. We want to make sure that we get your questions, any questions that you have, anything that you want to say. We want to make sure that we chat with you tonight so that you can be able to interact with us. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share this with everyone on your social media pages so they can tune in with Tea Time. Tonight, my guest is the wonderful April Wells. Come on, say hi, April.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
This is my good friend. I got to tell you how we came to know each other.
Yes.
Because this is important. Let me tell you why it's important. It's important to know really like how the Lord connects you to people. Mm-hmm. So we met several years ago because our daughters went to high school with each other. And one day, her daughter came home with my daughter, and I'm like, hi. I didn't, never met her before. And then she was like, yeah, I live around the corner. I'm like, seriously? And then, of course, we went around the corner, and her parents literally lived. Literally around the corner.
For real, like right around the corner.
Like a 30-second walk around the corner. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey. So we began talking because our daughters were in track together and all of that. And we found out that we actually have a lot in common.
Yes.
A lot in common. So we were connected by our kids. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Lexi and Kennedy. Shout out to them who brought us together. And we've been friends ever since. I look up to April as an amazing woman with lots of gifts and talents, and she is a praying woman. Like, this woman prays. It's amazing. So what you'll find out tonight, this is who she is, and I'm excited about it. So please give her a nice shout out on Tea Time Chat to Miss April Wells. Welcome her to the team. So April, tell us more about who you are. Because I know April as wife and mom. You can give all of those things, mm-hmm. but you're so much more than that.
Wow. That is true. I think there is more to me. That is true. So again, thanks for the opportunity. I'm so excited to be here, and we're about to do all the tea time with Tiffany. So who am I? I am first and foremost and absolutely in love with Jesus. As you said about prayer, for me, the posture of intercession is really about a position that I occupy. So I think in any facet of my life, that's probably the most central theme, is a prayer warrior. And that informs how I am as a wife, that informs how I lead as a mother, that informs how I serve and bring the work in education and the spaces where I do occupy there. That also, that notion of the ministry of reconciliation through what I understand, this posture of prayer, informs how I serve in the community, what the levels of advocacy looks like. It also informs how I do things that are just outlets, something that's just for fun for me. So I see the work of Christ in the ministry of reconciliation, even through photography. So that's who I am. I think when you put all of that together, I am a mix of energy for someone who just likes to be there to bring the heat and ignite wherever I can and serve and be of help. Yes.
Do you all hear this? I just wanted to, do you all hear, like, first of all, the posture of prayer, my position with the Father informs how I do everything. First of all, who talks like that? April. Yeah, that's my friend. See,
I'll take that. Yes.
I absolutely love it. I mean, just the way that she thinks is so, obviously you all are going to fall in love with her too. So you mentioned many different things, and I really want to kind of get into this realm of education. and what you do. You see how she lights up when you talk about education? You see this? Because I'm really just upset because I left my book at home. But she has written a book, and I want you to tell us about this book, because this book is amazing, and then I want you to use that to kind of help us understand who you are in this realm of education. Great.
Okay. So yes, my work in education is something that is completely an extension of my identity, of who God has formed me. It's pretty serendipitous how I ended up in education, though. So education is not my first career. So a word to anyone, be open to those divine interruptions that the Lord will do. Yeah. So I was working for a Microsoft Learning Center, and I loved training, loved it. And that can actually even be connected back to growing up as a kid. I was the teacher, so I played school. Loved supplies, like literally, I'm looking at my binder over there now with my pencils and notebooks and all of those things. Highlighters were my jam. Colored pencils, wow. So I had an affinity to, doing school. I was always interested in being someone who could help to solve problems. And not just the rote way of getting things done, but I'm famous for asking the questions that will help us to understand more. Yeah. So I didn't realize I was called to education until I was doing something. When you're out of alignment with what your identity is, lots can be revealed to you. So my grandmother, in her absolute manifold wisdom from God, said to me, I was kind of bemoaning my career and talking about what it was. I think I was at a point of really just negotiating salaries with tech gurus, and that was at the point where it was a real big boom, so maybe about 25 years ago. And consultants and I would go back and forth literally about, a couple $1,000s for a sign-on bonus. Yeah. And I'm sitting here like, there has to be more to life than this, And so my grandmother told me, you're a teacher. And I actually responded, no, you're wrong on that one. I am not a teacher. And so I kind of thought about it. And when you are operating and not necessarily in alignment, when you've actually said to the Lord, okay, I'm looking for you to lead and direct me. So as a result, I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I left something that was absolutely comfortable for something that was unknown, unfamiliar. And we didn't have any educators in my family, that I knew of, and the more recent kind of a connection to me. So I started as a daily substitute teacher, and that was a little better than 23 years ago. Are you serious? I am serious. So it was one of those situations where the work really spoke to me on a level that required me to bring my whole self to show up. So it was something that I could see every day making an impact. And it connected in a way because I realized my experience. I'm one of 5 children with my mother. And I saw some of the struggles my mother had navigating school systems. And so for me, when I went into education, and my continued commitment to this day is, if I ever forget what commitment and care looks like for the individuals who sit on the other side of the table, then I'm in the wrong place.
Wait, say that again. Just say that again.
That if I ever forget what commitment and care looks like for the individuals who are sitting on the other side of the table, i.e. parents or stakeholders or those who are just advocating for their children, then I'm in the wrong place.
Wow. Oh, that's good.
So it's really about being an answer. And so my current position is that I serve as the gifted coordinator for School District U46. It's really interesting in the way God works. Though your beginning is small, your ladder shall greatly increase.
Yeah.
I was held back after kindergarten.
What?
I was held back after kindergarten. So I oversee the gifted program in the second largest district in the state of Illinois. I grew up as a child of poverty, obviously had talent and skills and abilities, but they didn't always manifest in the classroom the way teachers were looking to see what manifestations of talent and ability looked like. Quite honestly, I was quiet my entire kindergarten year.
Wow.
So for me, it was a disconnect. I went to Head Start, and I loved Head Start. Everybody looked like me. We sounded alike. We came from the same neighborhoods. We vibed. I went to my elementary school, and for the first time, I experienced the weight of the only. When you look around,
okay.
And not everybody looks like you. The rhythm with which we're doing school doesn't sound like how we do the rest of life. And so instead of, putting myself out there and doing something that wasn't the way we navigated and do school, so I grew up in Clifford Court, and sometimes we were known as those kids from Clifford Court.
And Clifford Court, for people who are watching that don't know what this
So
area is.
Clifford Court is one of the low-income housing neighborhoods in the Elgin area. And so I didn't realize at that time I was suffering from stereotype threat. Yes, stereotype threat. So
Please define stereotype threat.
Of course. All right. So stereotype threat means that when an individual or a group feels like they carry the responsibility of thoughts of others' thoughts and perceptions about a group. So I did not want to perform in a way that would cast any more negative judgment on those kids from Clifford Court, because again, I was carrying, this is self-perceived.
Yeah, but it's a weight though.
It's a weight.
In kindergarten.
In kindergarten. Yes.
I mean, this is fascinating, by the way. Just fascinating. So, so take us now to, you're now that person that has to identify this kindergartner who others are looking at, like, 'cause I guess you were saying that you shrunk back instead of speaking.
Yes.
And so what happened after that?
Right. So what happened is actually there were individuals who, what I call cultural brokers. So they saw in me something that I wasn't bringing to and showing up in those ways. So they provided access to the playing field in education. So my job now is exclusively to support students and then identify.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
we're particularly for gifted or advanced services, we identify and then we support students.
Amen. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, just the fact that the Lord set you up from that early time,
Right.
For lack of identification. And so now you are what you needed at that age.
That's exactly it. I am what I needed at that age. Wow. And so my job is to really speak for the Aprils who continue to come after me, to speak for the Jermaines and the Johns, these are my siblings, to speak for those who are coming after me because we continue to come.
Wow. I'm so amazed. And so now you, when I met you, you were like going all around the world speaking. And what do you do when you go to these different conferences? What is it that they ask you to do?
So what I'm asked to do, so I have a couple of ways that I approach the work. I serve on the board of directors for the National Association for Gifted Children, as well as our state association. Oh. So I support organizations as they look to redefine their practices or policies, particularly for the places where we need to center the voices of those who have been pushed to the margin. So I serve as a consultant and come in and really walk through an analysis through an equity lens to say, where is the missingness taking place? Who's not being accounted for?
Yeah.
And not stopping there. So our resolve has to be, like, I am legit at this point where I will not take opportunities where I don't see that there are going to be sustainable practices.
Come on.
We have to make this stick.
Yes.
Yes. Otherwise, we're wasting our time.
So this gets into the book.
Yes.
So please tell us about the book.
So the book, Achieving Equity in Gifted Education, is honestly something I never set out to do.
Why not?
Just didn't think about it. It was one of those things where literally God's thoughts had to speak to the spirit in me to allow me to see what was already there. Wow. So I was going presenting, internationally even, presenting and speaking to this very large body of work. And I'm literally thinking, this is just what I do, right? It's just how it goes. And the Lord spoke to me clearly and said that this would be an opportunity for him to show that I was being made an answer.
Wow.
So not for me though, but so that it would be medicine for others.
Wow.
And what I was able to do with the book was to literally capture the essence of, we had a federal discrimination lawsuit in gifted services. And so with the redesign that I facilitated, I was able to capture what we did with that and provide that as a support or a blueprint for other organizations that would be looking to either one, avoid a lawsuit, or to, to really just in a more overarching way, have equitable access for students in programs.
I mean, like this right here is a game changer. I see it as a game changer because so many of our children have been pushed to the margins, have been overlooked, have been counted out. And there's such a need right now, especially for us to identify these children and let them know, like, no, there is more available to you. We have resources for you. You can do it. And just because your environment doesn't look like, your school environment doesn't match your home environment. I think that's really a big part of it. And when we see kids who they don't know how to respond to these other environments.
Correct.
I recognize it because, my kids had those same type of things. They went into schools and their school environment didn't look like their home environment.
Yes.
And learning how to navigate that, I think, is a skill.
Oh, it definitely is. And it's one that requires explicit instruction in how to do it. Because we're expecting children, even at the youngest of ages, to know how to traverse and to cross, in multiple worlds. In our sphere of education, we call some of them third culture, kids. Yeah. So they're operating in multiple cultures, and we have expectations that they'll just know what performance looks like in all of those areas. And that's what I like to think of. So if I were to write another book, it would be really unpacking the playbook in education, because that's part of what is understood but not widely conveyed in a lot of environments.
Man, that's good. That's so good. So obviously, we have a lot of mothers and fathers who watch this show and they're like, okay, I have kids, and especially now in this e-learning, distance learning environment. I know you've probably witnessed a lot of changes, obviously. But they're like, now that they are home, they're able to actually see their kids, and they're watching how their kid is learning or not responding. What advice do you give to these types of parents to identify their kids' strengths or weaknesses, or helping them in this environment? Because this is definitely something different that they're in now.
True. I do want to say, prior to going into my response to that, when I think of the field of gifted education, this e-learning and virtual space is something that we have maximized for well over the last 20 plus years.
Really?
So there have always been families who have accessed outside resources and have their children in these environments where they were already becoming proficient in this sort of a platform.
Oh.
And these are their enrichment services. Yes.
I understand that. Yes.
So
yes.
Much of this is, understanding how to do school in this environment. So for parents, okay, obviously, we are parents of an 8-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 21-year-old. Mm-hmm. So seeing what learning looks like across, their experiences, and now looking through the lens of a parent today, of a third grader, and then an educator as a practitioner. One of the greatest tools I think that we can really maximize with students in learning and kids, first of all, when I encounter children and we're in an educational capacity, they're scholars. So the goal is to have them to have this espousal of a scholarly disposition. Someone who understands, I am supposed to be here, I deserve a seat at this table, and I will engage and bring my full self to this work.
Amen.
So a scholarly disposition. We also know that when I connect divides, so what we're dealing with now in this e-learning is a lot of equity gaps. And so the equity gaps, namely, one of the greatest things that we withhold from the majority of students on an everyday basis is critical thinking disposition. You can think about it.
Right.
Thinking like a lawyer.
Yes.
That's a skill.
It is a skill.
And you're taught how to think that convergent, divergent, evaluative.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's necessary, right?
Absolutely.
And we can see how often or how infrequently we provide those sets of skills in classrooms. So it's an area where there is crossover into all the content area. So to parents, I say, one thing that we can always understand that helps our children to grow is to be in a place where they're at the edge of their zone. Force them to do something they don't feel good at.
Okay. I like that.
Yes,
that.
and realizing that growth comes from those places. And we keep in mind that we support them. Many of us have high expectations. I was so guilty with our oldest one. I'm just like, you are going to get it. You are my child, so it should just come to you, right?
Yes. And then,
And
then no.
Yeah, and it's just like, no. There's something about an individual's profile and the way they learn and how it works.
Yeah.
And so just really starting to frame it so that one thing we did understand is be led by your child's interest, their curiosities.
Yeah.
And one of the things we can really all stop doing is the low-hanging fruit is usually, so what did you learn today? Or what was fun? Or what? No. I shifted. We had a shift in our household.
Okay.
It is no longer what did you learn. It is what good questions did you ask?
Oh.
Now, sometimes during this e-learning with our very precocious 8-year-old, those questions are wearing me out.
Well, this is the question I asked today. Are you ready for it?
Right. So I think providing platforms where our children will be exposed to an expectation that they will think.
Wow.
And I like to say one of the encouragements that I use is that the quality of your thinking is revealed through the quality of your questions.
You have so many, like, I'm overwhelmed by what you're saying. Like, the quality of your thinking is revealed by the quality of your questions.
Yes.
I love it. And that's exactly true.
Right. That's what we do. As we're processing and thinking, we show that's how we're learning.
Yeah.
But in many instances with learning, we want them to show, we almost say skip the process of learning and let me see your answers.
Right.
What's the right answer? How did you get there? Like, no.
Yeah. Ooh, did you think it through?
There you go. You want to take the show on the road? Did you think it through?
Yes.
Yes.
And the truth is, now I'm going to say this to all of you, did you think it through? Because, whether you're talking to your children or are you speaking to yourself in the mirror, what is the quality of your thinking is revealed through the quality of your questions. Are you asking the right questions at your job? Are you asking the right questions in your relationships? Are you asking the right questions at your church? The quality of your thinking. Listen, this can go so far. But I'm serious. Like, and teaching our children how to think, and that is the thing that I, it's the thing that really drives me is trying to get people to begin thinking in ways that they never have before. Come out of the box that you don't know. I can't stand it when I'm talking to people and they're like, well, I just don't know. Did you try to figure it out? Did you think through any of the, a logical progression of thought? What was your progression of thought? Did you start somewhere and just end there? Or did you go somewhere with your thinking? Like, where did your thinking take you? And it all stems on what questions did you ask yourself? Yes. What questions did you ask the person that you're trying to gain information from? It's all about thinking. And that's really what you're saying. Like, we have to teach our children how to think. Forget about them coming up with the right answers for or to a test or memorizing information. But did you think it through? I love it.
Think it through. And support I like to provide with parents with that is, parents, we can relieve ourselves from feeling like we have to have all the answers.
Yeah. There
are things my children do in school that I don't have the answers for. But what I can do is to support their investigation of the process.
Come on.
Can support and recall what they provide from their analysis of it.
Yeah.
So when we think about levels of questions, and I can come to KAC and do this. So what we do is we teach parents the levels of questions to engage with their children to produce the highest levels of thinking.
You're coming here to do that?
I can come here and do that. Yeah,
absolutely.
I would completely come here and do that.
Yes.
And see, those are the things we need. When I look at even the nature of the program or in the field of gifted education, I'll have parents reach out to me, how do I prepare my child for the test? And my response for them usually doesn't, turn out very favorably because they think I'm saying this in jest. It's have fun, engage in a rewarding life with your child, let them ask questions, and they're looking like, I can't buy that though on Amazon, or I can't order that. So yes, there is this whole idea of understanding the construct of the test.
Yeah.
So for instance, majority of gifted programs use tests that look at reasoning skills and learning abilities, right?
Yeah.
So while you can't necessarily teach to the test, you can teach for the construct of that. So if it's a test of all analogies and your little son has never seen an analogy in his life, when he sits there and the test is presented before him, because I know not just in my school district, I know very widely school districts rarely teach analogous reasoning. And then we're testing for specialized programs in advanced academics with a test that kids haven't been exposed to the construct of it. So teach analogies.
Yeah.
Up is to down, as left is to right. And then go to, how are those related? And let them, and say things like, well, invite me into your thinking. How did you figure that out? So those are some of the things that I say that even my mother, who was a parent of 5 children in a single parent household, those were questions she could ask.
Yeah.
Those were experiences that she could navigate. And so what we are endeavoring to do, particularly in e-learning, is to ensure engagement looks like not that I'm sitting here and raising my hand and answering questions, but what thoughts am I producing as a result? What next step can I consider as we look at this work?
This is so good. I mean, the information that you're providing us, showing us, this is how I really wish I had you last year so that I can, because, it's difficult when you're navigating this. My 14-year-old, just like your 14-year-old, and she knows everything. And try. So I'm going to ask her tonight, invite me into your thinking. How did you get there?
That's it? Yes.
Text
me after you do it so I can see what her response is.
I love the language that I'm adopting today. Everything that I do through the Father informs everything else that I do. And then I'm going to invite her into, I want her to invite me into her thinking. I love this.
Can I make a connection for you though?
Please.
So when you say this, I'm sitting here and I have benefited from the very skillful teaching of yours and here at the Kingdom Advancement Center. Seriously. That is the same level of thinking and unpacking that you guys do with the word. Okay. So we take that and we put that in. So now we're just going to apply that in, in calculus and trigonometry.
Yes, come on.
And ELA.
Yes.
You do it. That's exactly what you do.
You're right. We just have to do this with our children.
Yes.
In the same way that we teach the word and we break it down and make you think. We use the Socratic method is what we use to help. Like you can't just give people the answer. They'll never understand the Father or even try to if you don't make them think and actually ask the right questions. No, how do we get there? Why are we getting there? What are we using? What are we, Okay.
You had me on here for what you already know.
No, I had to do this. We all need to learn. I'm getting a whole education today, an entire education today. I need the language. Invite me into your thinking. What are you thinking about this? I love it. I'm having a ball. I have a question for you.
Okay.
How can parents keep their gifted children from becoming unmotivated when they don't feel like they're being challenged?
Wow. So underachievement in gifted is something that continues to plague the field. And I think first understanding what is fueling that underachievement. So I like to talk about students being available for learning. And I must be honest, I employ this more in my professional practice than I do in my house. Yeah. So I have to work on that. But really seeing, in some instances, there just may be things that are interfering with the child's ability to engage in the learning in the way that we know that she or he is capable. So what we can always start with is something that is of interest. We talk about this notion of windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors. How do I see myself in this learning? How do I see reflections of me? So if we're looking at science and standards, do I understand this through the perspective of people who look like me? What individual pursuit can I do with this? Am I given the autonomy to also have some independent activity with this? Most days our house is a mess. And that's because our 8-year-old she's literally, she has the conceptual framework. She thinks like an engineer. So she's taking things apart. She's exploring, she's putting together, she's building, she's designing. And we try as much as possible to connect that to what she's learning in school in those areas because, she'll come home and say, well, we didn't do science. It's like, oh, okay. So I think with parents, figuring out what can we do to help ignite the light that's there? One of the greatest skills I've learned, really, though, is also praying and seeking the Father.
Yes.
And asking, what is the answer you've created this child to be able to respond to? Doesn't that take the pressure off us?
Yeah, but that's it's. I think it's a question, a prayer that most parents don't think to ask.
I have 3 children, and I didn't think to ask it for all 3.
So I'm like, Lord, if I only just said, Lord, what is it that you called my child? Yes. Well, actually, we frame it mostly like, what problem did you call him to fix?
There you go.
What problem did you call her to fix? There's something in the world. And so you're like, what question did you call her to answer?
Exactly. And so when we do this, so God has created us to be answers, right? And so that allows me to operate and understand that my identity and how I do this is fixed according to what the Father predetermined about me. So I'm going to be the answer. So even for me professionally, it's allowed me to show up in a way that, come on, I'm talking about equity in the space of education that's usually the most antagonistic area in education when you look for students who are culturally, linguistically, or economically diverse. So I'm coming saying that your program that is amazing and provides all of these outcomes and experiences for XYZ children, but this level of missingness for these kids who are sitting there, and that's not always a popular thing.
Yeah.
But when I understand that, okay, so I am relieved of the responsibility of it when I know that the Father made me an answer for this. Again, because we go back to, I was the child who was held back after kindergarten. And now I'm facilitating gifted programs.
Yes.
So it's not about me, it's what he has equipped and put in me to be able to do.
You better
He
say
made
it.
me an answer.
He made me an answer. What did the Lord make you an answer for? Or what question did he call you to answer? He made me an answer.
That is right. And thinking about that, that's something we can really operationalize that. Let's get the t-shirts.
Listen,
He made me an answer.
He made me an answer. I need
He
you to
made
do
me an
that
answer.
today. Today. I'm sure gonna wear it.
He made me an answer. Yes.
Oh my goodness. I think that this is so, is anyone else here thinking that they're getting educated today? I feel like I'm getting a whole entire education today.
So am I.
Getting the education because we have to begin to change the way that we think, be transformed, renewing our minds to understand what God is really telling us, especially as it relates to our children and their education and how we can position them to be the answer.
Right. That's it.
Positioning them to be the answer. And I want you to get more into, because I know this is where this is really what you've been saying. I know that you are a prophet. I know that the Lord has called you to into these places, which is why you can go in there and speak truth to power, and they have to move because of who you are, who you've been positioned to be. So for the audience, because I'm always captured by her. I'm sitting here speechless most of the time. Tell us how you use your gifts from God to be able to do your job, or my friend calls it the false dualism.
Yeah.
Like there really isn't a false dualism, this bifurcation. Like there's clearly no false dualism. Like we are who we are in whatever setting. So show us or tell us how you actually do that.
Yeah, so that whole bifurcation, that it's separate, that I am this entity at work and then this. No, for me, it's completely and inextricably part of my identity, who I am. So it's interesting when we talk about this mountain of education, though. So that was literally spoken over my life by Apostle Henderson. No, I'm so serious.
Wow.
So absolutely serious. So I had been performing and doing this work and doing it to the best of my God-given ability, but the missing link was I didn't understand that I had been called. And literally when he said to me, you know, Sister April, you are called as a king on the mountain of education, I was like, what's that? Okay, I need unpack this for me. But you know, you don't just say that right there at Kingdom Advancement.
That's
I could have,
you
right?
You could have. It was. I remember
literally
that.
Yes.
That was before you went to Sydney.
Yes.
Oh, I remember.
Right. And so with that was something that literally unlocked strategy.
Wow.
Unlocked opportunity. And I have to hold myself from crying right now.
Wow.
Because it gave me to see a different level of assurance of truly what provision means when God leads and guides.
Ooh.
And that was at a time where I was, if I could be honest,
Yes.
which that's all I will be, right? Is I was questioning, God, is this really the work you want me to do?
Come on.
Because it was at a time when the Lord had me to address some other things in education and to step away from gifted.
Wow.
And so I'm like, okay, you exposed me to all of this. I love this. I found my tribe. And the Lord was like, no, not right now. But he didn't tell me not right now. He just said no.
Wow.
And then I came and I received that prophetic word. And that was one that I understood then, learning how to wage war over that, how to water that prophecy,
Come
how to
on.
pray over it, how to walk it out. You talking
yeah.
about praying, like getting on my face, Lord, seeking you for an answer. And so all of that has been what's produced me doing that exact same thing in the sphere of education. Now, a lot of them don't know that that's exactly what I'm doing.
Right, right.
You know, they'll be like, those words were amazing. That was, these are not my words. Like, I am directly hearing from the Father. There have been instances where people will say, oh, say that again so I can, and I'll say to them, I don't remember. Because I can literally understand when it's the hand of the Father that's on me, anointing me to get the job done.
Yeah.
And so there are instances, and I believe it's where the Lord keeps us understanding, like he says, you know, when we see the Ark of the Covenant, to keep that distance so that we don't become familiar with him, that I don't. You know, so I have to understand that this is where April can operate.
Yeah.
This is where the gifting places me. And this is where the anointing places me. And so that allows me then to rely on God. Because I have walked, okay, so I work in education in a space that's, you know, majority of people have advanced degrees, doctorate and beyond. I pressed pause on my doctoral studies.
Really?
Yes, yes. And for me, it was one to honor my commitment to my family.
Okay.
So my husband was going to school, and I can be known as extra credit, doing a little too much. So I'm pursuing doctoral studies and decided I was also going to be an adjunct professor at the same time.
Oh.
And work full time and
you
raise children.
You're doing the most.
Yeah, so pause.
Extra credit.
Extra credit. So when we think of that, so everything that I do literally, so I am one to, I seek the Lord for what he will give me to do. When I look at policies, just by nature, it's not my understanding. So I'll have to ask, Father, what do we need to address so that we can make the last first? What do we need to address so that literally the children who have been written off? So I know what it's like to be overlooked. I was not identified for gifted services in the very district where I serve now. And I eventually advocated to get into programs and graduate with, you know, all of these things that are commensurate with and I didn't become gifted all of a sudden. It's just that we see it. So I rely on the Father to give me answers in order to be able to do the job. So when I see the office of a prophet, I'm speaking what the Lord gives me, and I'm implementing programs that align with what he says. For instance, so I grew up again as a child of poverty, like I shared. My mother never owned a car. All right. So for gifted services, there are experiences here in the Northwest suburbs, but if you say go to maybe Evanston, there is a whole nother world of experiences. So God gave me to see, it was good that I was afflicted, right? The things that maybe I didn't have exposure for and with, I would understand how necessary they were for kids in today's time.
Yes.
So that's how, when we look at, thanks be to God, been able to form partnerships with like Northwestern University to bring the programs here.
All right.
So our families access them.
Yes.
And then you build capital, and we not only do the program here, but then we start to go where they are.
I appreciate it. We benefited.
Yes. For real.
I appreciate it.
And we think about, and so you see what those opportunities do. I mean, these kids are sitting here calculating, the permutations of cells for cancer and things.
Yes.
And they come home and you're like, yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Anaya, when she went to a program through Northwestern, and she came back talking about how they were splitting cells, and I have no clue to this day what she's talking about.
Before middle school, she's in middle school.
Yes.
And so it's about that. It's about really understanding when you have roots in the Lord that establish you, that there are going to be individuals that, you're going to have the fruit that remains, but it's going to be able to sustain and nourish somebody else.
So how do we as the church help bridge the gap for equity for our children? What can we do?
Yes. The church, the body.
The body.
All right. So I think we have to see, one, that there needs to be a partnership. Okay. Understanding what this partnership looks like and realizing the capital and the experiences that the body brings. Okay. So again, as the body, we have answers. We are answers. We can serve in partnership in many instances in education to bring something that may not be provided for. If we think of the necessities so children are able to perform at optimal levels when they know that there is an adult who cares for them, is involved in their lives, engaged. When we think just naturally, the educator workforce is not as diverse as our student population, right? So as someone who is part of those groups, we can support school districts, we can support teachers, we can support administrators with giving them knowledge that we have that can be used to construct opportunities that are going to work for our kids. So we can say, first thing I say for the church, for parents, review the board policy for your school district. Learn that, read it, ask questions about it, and find out what are some of the not only the responsibilities, but what are the privileges that you have as a member of this district? Understanding that. Sometimes when we think about, it's sometimes the unintended consequences. There are things that will be there, but if we don't necessarily have the savvy and understand how to navigate and get it and see that there's something we can bring of value to this. So I think that's one piece. Another piece is really being present. And so when we look at, again, there's a very colossal opportunity for the cultural conflict to ensue in schools. Again, just because of the disconnect. So I think when we as the body can serve to be in schools, and I'm not saying we all have to be teachers, okay? We're not saying that.
We're not saying that.
But I am saying that if you can find a way to be in the schools, to support. Maybe that's through some volunteerism. Maybe that's volunteering to be on various committees. Maybe that's something so that then we bring the salt into the system.
Come on.
And so that allows us then, we know naturally that we can find ways for the environment to calibrate to something that where we're supporting and we're leading these endeavors in a way that's going to promote what we are, anticipating in terms of fulfillment of the kingdom agenda. So I look at it that way. When I see members of the body who are serving in various capacities in education, for instance, I can tell you right now there's a critical need for mentorship in public schools. And so when we think of legislation and laws in public schools, there are many laws and public acts that I do agree with. And there are many that I just vehemently am opposed to. So I think for us to be vocal and to occupy a place of advocacy,
that's it.
Let's bring that to let's be the salt.
Let's be the salt.
Let's be the salt. So let's bring that. And I also think just so maybe our own personal children may not experience some of the things that we know that other children do. So maybe, Anaya's not experiencing or Sydney isn't, but this is what Tiffany or April needed.
Yeah.
So we can be there so that we're bridging experiences for kids. So a little story. I was an assistant principal at a building, and I had this very beautiful little black girl who was in one of the classrooms. She was accused of being sassy, right? And the kids, see, I'm going between my worlds now. You see how I did that? So she was accused of being sassy, and the kids felt like she was being mean. So, they were saying some things her teacher wrote her up for a referral. And it had to do with the way she was swinging her hair.
Shut up.
Yes. Well, what they didn't understand, and this is where I serve as the cultural broker, because I'm looking and I see she has beads in her hair.
Yes.
I'm going to swish my hair too.
All day.
Because what that did for her was it affirmed her identity.
Yes.
They didn't understand the amount of hours that went into the braids and the beads, the precision.
Yes.
And so if she had her shoulders a little more square, and if she was swishing, she was not being mean to you. She was elevating herself.
Come on.
So I had to say, this referral, no.
No.
We're not doing this. Let me tell you what this actually means,
Help
what this is a
them.
manifestation of. And I had to learn. So at one point, I'd go in there and be churchy, right? Like, no, you bring it on. Look, I was like, what this is a manifestation of, okay, so, and really just getting to it. And part of that was mixing capital.
Okay.
So bridging that experience and helping to, their perspective and my perspective is only what we've been exposed to. And we know privilege is insidious.
Insidious.
That'd be a whole nother segment, right?
That's an entire new show.
Yeah, So, in thinking of that, and me being someone who could leverage the conversation to inform, and so had they had another assistant principal who was not black and did not have experience of knowing what it felt like for the swish of the braids and it moving, and can we all just take a moment to embrace what that sounds like when the beads go?
Yes.
It's like we all feeling it, right?
We
you went right back to 9 years old.
Yes. I used to love, you could not tell me anything with my beads.
Yes, you are swishing.
I'm like, what? I mean, always with my beads. Always. That's why I like braids right now.
Look. And so thinking of that, so me being someone who could be an agent of change in there to foster that conversation.
I love it. I absolutely love it. This is exactly what we need to know. I started a mentorship program in our district some years ago. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And but because of bureaucracy, I had to stop. So now there's still a need for that. I may figure out a way to get that back again, because it's a good program, and I know the need for mentoring.
Exactly.
And I think the church, we have so many people with so many gifts, so many talents, and do what she's saying to do.
Yes.
Figure out what's happening in your district and how you can be an advocate for these kids. Advocacy is huge.
Huge.
Advocacy is everything. And I think that was where my heart was at the time. I just wanted to advocate for them.
Yes.
I wanted to be a mentor for them, and then bring people into their lives that they can look up to, that they can see it's possible.
Yes.
So this is what, okay, now you're lighting a fire under me now. Now we're getting a whole nother program in my mind.
We'll have a whole sign-up list after this, right? We have a to-do list now.
Absolutely. I want to get into something a little lighter.
Okay.
Please tell us about Favor Tale. It's such a beautiful name, and I want to know how you came up with it. So tell us about Favor Tale Photography.
Okay. So Favor Tale Photography, again, when you grow up with limited funds, there are certain things you just don't do. So here in our area, Olin Mills was huge with pictures, right?
Girl, Olin Mills was huge in my area when I was growing up.
You got the little gold embossed thing at the bottom, right?
Dayton, Ohio, it was Olin Mills, girl. We was going getting us some pictures.
So you got pictures at Olin Mills?
Our family did get Olin Mills pictures the one time.
I
think they got a coupon or something. We got the one time. Olin Mills family picture.
So in my household, we never had a professional picture of my mother and her kids. And so it was always something that stuck out for me. And when I would go places looking at people's houses or whatever, I always wanted to see who is here. And part of how we know who's here is there's some evidence. There's some artifacts. There's pictures of you, right? And so I really took on this charge of my desire is so that every child can see themselves somewhere in a professional image.
That's beautiful.
And I also know that for the majority of us, like, pictures are for moms, right?
Yes. Yes.
For real.
I have to force my kids to take pictures.
We force them. We get it done.
Yes.
Yes, by any means necessary.
Yes.
And so I think, we can get really caught up in the day-to-day, the mundane, and kind of just, and when you can stop and look at a picture where, so I say I have this power of freezing time. And when you can stop and look back, it's just like you get all the ushy feelings, like, like, oh, that was us. And so when we see that, it's something that I believe it's a necessity. And I want it to be such a way that in the industry, in photography, really showing what pictures of poised, Black and brown families look like.
Yeah.
That has been like part of my mission. And interestingly enough, my father also did photography.
Wow.
And so my first set of lights, my dad gave them to me. So much symbolism in that, giving me the light and from the father. And so the name Favor Tale, though, is something that God gave to me to help me to understand who he's called me to be. That really, everything in my life, one is something that I can't take credit from. It's that God has favored me. He has favored me, and he's written a story about me, and he's allowed me to play out the role. And so that's where Favor Tale comes from.
So you just do this in your free time whenever you get time.
Right. And so it fuels me. It's one of those things. So our father is a creator, right?
Yes.
And so I do understand that's another thing we talk about with children. They need to have outlets for creating.
Yes.
We're destined. We're made to create.
Come on.
And so with me, that was, I was kind of a little square, and that I didn't really have an outlet. I didn't do anything for fun. And my husband got me a camera, and he said, just go take pictures of stuff.
Wow.
And so that really did, it allowed me to do something that is just my thing, and it fuels me. And of course, there's ministry in that.
Yeah.
So I'll work with the family, and then it's like, before we end up the session, it's, can I pray with you?
Of course.
Of course.
Because it informs everything. It informs everything.
And God will give me something that will just be, like, for real, a word right there for that situation, not having knowledge, prior knowledge of it, and so just being used and having a willingness to say, Father, that there is not anything that I will do that I won't welcome your presence and how you will use me in it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've given us so many things. I'm overwhelmed by everything. And if you learn nothing else, like this is the proper way to educate ourselves and our children, is learning how to think critically, asking the right questions, because you have been made to be an answer. I learned something today.
Wow.
We have been made to be answers. And I want to, before I close up, I do want you to tell us about well-suited solution, because that is important. Because this is really, really, really big. I know what it is, but they don't. So tell us, what is Well-Suited Solution, LLC?
Right. So Well-Suited Solution really originated from a place of God, again, calling us to be answers. So my husband and I formed a consultant company where we support organizations, be it state associations, school districts, schools, or other entities who are looking at some of their policies or practices through an equity lens. And so we bring opportunities for them to design solutions aimed at remedying some of their challenges.
I have so many people that need you. Okay.
Well, and what's interesting, when we look at God and how he works, God stretches us, right?
Yeah.
And, so I don't see myself as the most adept business person. I do see myself adept as somebody who operates in the kingdom.
Yes.
And so God uses this vehicle in the business of Well-Suited Solution. So we come together, and my husband's a social worker, you know that.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, okay, so what do we see in this? Again, not walking by sight, because walking by sight, we're like, okay, we don't have time for anything else. But walking by faith, we understand that as a school social worker, there are constraints and things he can do and can't do. When we move with well-suited solution to a place of our services being expanded to having counseling services, and those are so well-suited. And I got it from, thank God my husband had that name, so it's in us.
It is in you.
It's in us. And so that's one of those things that we've been very blessed to have opportunities to walk alongside organizations to enhance their experiences. Again, for the least of these.
Okay, so listen. If you need help understanding what you have been called to be an answer to, you probably need to follow April. On Twitter, she's at EDUK8Gifted. Instagram, she's at Favoritale Photography. On Facebook, she's just April Wells. Follow her. She's always praying. Yes. She's always offering nuggets of light and hope and love, always giving you information, elevating you. Every time she opens her mouth or writes something, she's elevating the people around her. You want to follow her. I am excited because we have all gotten a great education today.
Class was in session.
Class was in session. She's clearly an educator of educators, clearly. This is the opportunity that we all receive to learn how to get into a position and a posture of critical thinking, understanding, so that we can become the solutions. And if you need a well-suited solution, you need April. If you need your favorite tale shown in photography, you need April. So I just want to thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for coming in and helping us all understand where we are right now and how we are an answer to the right question. And how we can get the answers that we need from the Father and all of these things. It's been awesome having you here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for all of your questions. Thank you for chatting with us. Continue to like, share, and subscribe to this broadcast. It's been fun. It's been informative. And I'm excited about Miss April Wells. Thank you again. Have a good night and enjoy the tea.
Thank you. Be well.
Time, tea with Tiff. Tea time, we're gonna talk about it. Tea time, take a sip. It's time to wind down, time to wise up. Discussing life, exploring the word, gaining wisdom with encouraging words. It's time for Tea with